My in-laws showed up at my door 2 weeks postpartum with a notary and a stack of papers, and they said, "It's just a safety plan." It was. It was a custody trap. Before we start, if you like full Reddit-style stories with twists, receipts, and real consequences, please hit like, drop your verdict in the comments, and subscribe. We're pushing for our first 1,000 subscribers, and it genuinely helps. I'm 29. My husband, Evan, is 32. We'd been married a little over 4 years when our son, Noah, was born. I need you to understand something about Evan's family. They don't yell. They don't slam doors. They don't do messy drama. They do something worse. They smile. They speak softly. They use words like concern and support and family. And they make you feel like the villain for protecting yourself. Evan's mom, Linda, is the queen of that. She's the type who will hug you while quietly moving the knife. When I was pregnant, she was obsessed with the baby. Not excited, obsessed. She referred to Noah as my baby, so often I started correcting her. She'd laugh and say, "I just mean my grandbaby." But it didn't feel like that. It felt possessive. She also had this weird fixation on my health. Every appointment she'd ask for details: blood pressure, weight, any mood swings, any anxiety, are you sleeping, as if she was checking boxes. Evan told me I was overthinking it. "She's just a nurse at heart," he said. "She is not a nurse. She sells insurance." Noah's birth was rough. I had a long labor, then complications. Nothing dramatic enough for a movie, but enough that my body felt like it had been hit by a truck. I was exhausted, sore, and emotional in that postpartum way where you can cry because the baby sneezed and it sounded cute. We came home. The house felt smaller. The days blurred together. Noah slept in short bursts. My hormones were doing backflips. Evan went back to work quickly and kept saying he was trying his best. He did some things. He held the baby. He changed diapers, but the emotional load, the night feedings, the constant care, that was on me. And Linda was suddenly everywhere. She started coming over to help. At first I appreciated it. She'd bring food, fold laundry, hold Noah while I showered. But she also gave me commentary the entire time. "You're holding him wrong. You're creating bad habits. You should let him cry a little. You look tired. Are you sure you're okay? Sleep deprivation can make new moms do irrational things." She said irrational like she'd practiced it. I told Evan it bothered me. He sighed and said, "She's just worried. She loves him." He was always him, not us, not our baby, just her relationship with the baby. 2 weeks postpartum on a Thursday, Evan texted me from work. "Mom's stopping by with something for the baby." I assumed it was clothes, a blanket, something normal. At 3:17 p.m. my doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw Linda, and Evan's dad, Richard, and a woman I didn't recognize holding a leather bag. Linda smiled like she was on a talk show. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "we're going to do a quick little thing, and then I'll make you tea." I blinked. "What is this?" Linda stepped aside and gestured to the stranger. "This is Marcy. She's a notary." My stomach dropped so fast it felt like a physical sensation. "A notary," I repeated. Richard gave me a warm, fake smile. "It's just paperwork, nothing scary." I should have shut the door right there. But postpartum does something to your brain. You're tired. You're trying to be polite. You're trying not to be the difficult one. And Evan's family thrives on that. So I stepped back, and they walked in like they owned the place. Linda set a folder on my kitchen table like she'd done it 1,000 times. Marcy sat down and opened her bag. Richard stood near the door like security. Linda looked at me with that soft voice again. "We just want to make sure Noah is protected, that's all." I held my baby tighter. Protected from what? Linda's smile didn't move. From emergencies, from uncertainties. I said, what uncertainties? Richard chimed in smoothly. Life happens, people get sick, accidents happen, it's smart to have a plan. Then Linda added, and you've been having a hard recovery, honey. There it was. The first dart. I felt my skin go cold. My recovery is fine. Linda nodded sympathetically like I was proving her point. Of course, of course. We're not saying it's not. We're just saying it's responsible to have paperwork. Marcy, the notary, slid a document toward me and clicked a pen. Linda said, it's just temporary guardianship, in case anything happens. I stared at the words on the top page, temporary guardianship agreement. My heart started pounding. Guardianship, why would we need that? Linda reached out like she was trying to calm a frightened animal. It's just a formality. If you ever got hospitalized or overwhelmed, Noah would already be legally covered. No delays, no state involvement. No state involvement, she said quickly, like that was the scariest thing possible. I looked at Richard. Why is this happening right now? Why is a notary in my kitchen? Richard's smile never slipped. Because it's easier when you're home, and because Evan agreed it's smart. I froze. Evan agreed. Linda's eyes glittered. Oh yes, Evan wants what's best for Noah, we all do. The words temporary guardianship kept echoing in my head. I didn't even fully understand what I was looking at, but my gut was screaming. I said, I need to read this. Linda laughed softly. Honey, it's standard. I'm reading it, I repeated firmer. Marcy paused and looked at Linda like, do we let her? Linda gave a small nod, still smiling. I read. The first page was full of legal language, but the more I read, the worse it got. It wasn't temporary guardianship in emergencies. It was a document that granted Linda and Richard authority over my child if I was deemed unable to provide adequate care, and the trigger language was vague on purpose. Physical incapacity, mental distress, impairment, any condition that interferes with decision-making. In other words, postpartum exhaustion could be spun into impairment if they wanted. Then there was a second document behind it, medical power of attorney. I felt my breath catch. That one wasn't even about Noah. It was about me. It named Linda as the person who could make medical decisions for me if I was unable. I looked up stunned. Why is there a medical power of attorney for me? Linda's face stayed soft. Because you're postpartum, sweetheart, it's a vulnerable time. If you had complications, if you fainted, if you had a bad reaction, someone needs to advocate for you. My voice came out sharper than I intended. My husband can advocate for me. Richard spoke, slow and calm like he was explaining something to a child. Evan is emotional. He might not make the right decisions under stress. Linda nodded like it was obvious. I'm experienced. I'd know what to do. Everything in me screamed no. I said, I'm not signing this. The air in the kitchen changed immediately. Linda didn't raise her voice. She didn't get angry. She did something scarier. She looked disappointed, like I'd broken her heart. Oh, she said softly, that makes me sad. Then she added gently, why are you being defensive? Defensive, another label. I said, because you brought a notary to my house 2 weeks postpartum, and you want me to sign legal documents giving you control over my baby and my medical decisions. Linda blinked slowly. That's not what this is. It literally is, I said, tapping the paper. Richard stepped forward slightly, voice still smooth. We're trying to keep Noah safe. If you refuse, it makes it look like you're hiding something. I stared at him. Hiding what? Linda's voice softened even more. Sweetheart, we've noticed you've been overwhelmed. There it was again, that word. Overwhelmed. Then Linda said the line that made my blood run cold. We just don't want anyone outside the family getting involved if things escalate. I felt my face go numb. Are you threatening me? Linda gasped quietly like I'd accused her of a crime. No, oh my gosh. No, I'm saying we love you. We want to protect you. Protect me by taking control. Marcy, the notary, cleared her throat like she wanted this to be over. She slid the pen closer. If you could just sign here and here. I pushed the pen away. No. Linda sighed and pressed her hand to her chest. Okay, okay, I hear you. Then she glanced toward Richard, and something passed between them, a silent communication. Richard said calmly, "We can come back when Evan is home." My stomach dropped again, because that meant Evan was involved. I said, "Do not come back. This is not happening." Linda stood up slowly and smoothed her sweater like she was preparing for a performance. She walked over and gently touched Noah's cheek. "We just want what's best for him." Then she looked at me and said sweetly, "Try to rest, honey. Your emotions are running high." That was it. That was the moment I realized this wasn't concern. This was strategy. They left as quietly as they arrived, like nothing happened. But the second the door closed, my hands started shaking. I did the first smart thing I'd done all day. I called Nina. Not the Nina from the other story. This is a different Nina, but apparently I collect women named Nina like protective charms. She's my closest friend, and she's blunt in a way I needed. When I told her what happened, she was silent for a moment, then she said, "Do not sign anything, and I need you to take photos of every page right now." So I did. Then I did the second smart thing. I called Evan. He answered cheerful, "Hey babe, everything okay?" My voice was steady but cold. "Your parents came with a notary." There was a pause, a fraction too long. He said, "Yeah, about that." My stomach twisted. "You knew." Evan sighed like I was being difficult. "It's not a big deal. It's just a safety plan." I said, "It's guardianship paperwork and power of attorney." Evan's voice tightened. "They're just being responsible." "Responsible for what?" I asked. "For taking my baby." Evan snapped, "Stop being dramatic." I felt something in me go very still. "Evan," I said quietly, "did you sign anything?" He hesitated. "No, it's for you to sign." "Why would I sign something giving your mother medical power of attorney over me?" I asked. Evan said, "Because you've been not yourself." Not yourself. I felt a hot wave of rage, but I forced my voice calm. I had surgery and gave birth. I'm exhausted. That doesn't mean I'm incompetent. Evan sighed again. "Mom's just worried. She said if anything happens, she doesn't want the state involved." And there it was, the phrase again. State involved. CPS. Court. The implications floated in the air like smoke. I said, "I'm not signing, and I want your parents out of our house." Evan's voice turned sharp. "You don't get to ban my parents." I said, "Watch me." Then I hung up. And I sat there on my kitchen floor, holding my baby, trying not to throw up. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to overreact, but my instincts were screaming that if I handled this wrong, I could lose control of my life. So I did the third smart thing. I called a family law attorney. It took me 3 calls to find someone with availability, but I found one who could do an emergency consultation the next day. I sent her the photos of the documents immediately. When the attorney called back, her first words were, "Do not sign these." Then she said, "I'm glad you called because this is not standard. This is a preemptive legal move." I felt cold all over. So I'm not crazy. No, she said. You're postpartum and they're trying to exploit that. The language is intentionally vague. It's designed to give them leverage. Leverage. That word made my stomach twist. The attorney asked if Evan was supportive. I laughed once bitterly. No. She told me to start documenting everything, to avoid being alone with his parents, and to consider staying with someone safe if Evan escalated. Then she gave me advice that probably saved me. Lock down access to your child's records. Pediatrician, daycare if you have one, hospital portal. Make sure no one can call pretending to be you or Evan and add themselves as an authorized guardian. I hadn't even thought of that. The next morning I called Noah's pediatrician and asked to update the permissions. I removed everyone except me and Evan, and I added a password to the account. Then I called the hospital portal and did the same. Then I changed every password I could think of, including our home Wi-Fi, because at that point I didn't trust anything. That night Evan came home irritated. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask how the baby was. He said, "You embarrassed my parents." I stared at him. They brought a notary to our house. Evan threw his keys on the counter, because they're trying to help. I said, "Help by taking guardianship." Evan scoffed, "It's not taking, it's a backup." I pulled out the printed documents and pointed at the clause about mental distress and impairment. "Explain this," I said. Evan glanced at it and shrugged. "Legal language, it doesn't mean that." "It means whatever they want it to mean," I said. "That's the point." Evan's jaw tightened. "You're being paranoid." Paranoid. Another label. I said, "If your mom truly wanted to help, she wouldn't have shown up with a notary like I'm signing a mortgage. She would have asked what I needed." Evan's eyes flashed. "She did ask, you just take everything as an attack." I realized in that moment, Evan was already on their side. Not because he hated me, but because he was trained to comply with them. He'd rather sacrifice my boundaries than deal with his mother's disappointment. That's when I knew this wasn't just about Linda and Richard. This was about my marriage. I said, "Your parents are not allowed here again without my explicit permission." Evan laughed sharply. "You can't control my family." I said calmly, "Then I'll control my presence." And I walked into the bedroom and locked the door. The next day, Linda tried a new tactic. She texted me, "I'm sorry you misunderstood. Let's talk like adults." I didn't reply. Then she texted again, "We're worried about the baby." Then Evan is stressed. "Please don't do this to him." Then, "This is not you, sweetheart." And then the message that made my hands shake. "If you refuse to cooperate, we may have to take steps to ensure Noah's safety." There it was, the threat without saying the word. I forwarded the message to my attorney. My attorney replied, "Do not respond, save everything." 2 days later, Linda showed up again. No notary this time, just Linda, smiling, holding a bag of groceries like she was a normal grandma. I didn't open the door, I spoke through it. "Linda, you need to leave." Her voice stayed sweet. "Honey, I brought food. Evan said it's fine." I said, "Evan does not get to invite you into my home after you tried to make me sign guardianship paperwork." Linda's voice sharpened slightly. "We're family." I said, "Leave." Linda paused, then said softly, "I'm concerned you're isolating." Isolating. I felt rage spark. "No, I'm setting boundaries." Linda sighed theatrically. "This is exactly the kind of behavior that makes people worried." I froze, because that sounded like she was trying to provoke me into saying something emotional. I didn't. I said, "Leave now." There was silence. Then she said quietly, almost a whisper, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." My stomach dropped. I hit record on my phone, not because I planned it, because my body moved on instinct. I said clearly, "Are you threatening to report me?" Linda's voice instantly softened again. "Oh my gosh, no, don't be ridiculous. I'm saying we want to support you." I said, "Then stop trying to take legal control of my baby." Linda's tone cooled. "You're making yourself look worse." Then she walked away. I stood there shaking, but I had her voice recorded. Not the explicit threat, she was too careful for that, but the manipulation, the language, the pressure. That evening Evan came home angry. He didn't even pretend to be gentle. He said, "My parents told me you refused to let them see Noah." I said, "Correct." Evan's eyes were hard. "You're punishing them." I said, "They tried to take guardianship." Evan snapped, "You're acting like they're criminals." I looked at him and said the truth. They are acting like people who want leverage over a postpartum woman. Evan's face tightened. "Do you hear yourself?" I realized he was trying to make me feel unstable. Not like Mark in the other story, but in a quieter way, calling me paranoid, dramatic, irrational. I said I spoke to an attorney. Evan froze. "You what?" "I spoke to an attorney," I repeated, "and she said not to sign anything and to document everything, including your mother's messages." Evan's expression shifted from anger to something like panic. "Why would you do that?" he said. "That's extreme." I said, "What's extreme is a notary in my kitchen 2 weeks postpartum." Evan took a step toward me. "You're blowing this up." I held Noah calm and steady. "No, I'm protecting him." Evan stared at me for a long moment, then said the sentence that broke the last piece of trust I had. "My mom thinks you might have postpartum depression. She said if you refuse help, it could get dangerous." I felt my blood turn to ice. Because postpartum depression wasn't concern in his mouth. It was ammunition. I said quietly, "Is this what you're doing, building a case?" Evan flinched. "No." I cut him off. "Yes, you are." Evan's voice rose. "I'm trying to keep our baby safe." And that was the first time he used that exact line. Like he'd been coached. I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I did what my attorney told me. I made a plan. That night I packed essentials, documents, baby supplies, a few clothes, my laptop, Noah's medical records. I didn't tell Evan. I didn't trust him to not stop me. In the morning, I went to my sister's house. I didn't leave the marriage. I didn't file papers immediately. I just removed myself and the baby from the situation so I could breathe and think. Evan texted nonstop. "Where are you? This is kidnapping. You can't take my son. My mom is freaking out." I forwarded every message to my attorney. My attorney told me to communicate only in writing and to stay calm. She drafted a short response for me. "Noah is safe. I am safe. I will coordinate parenting time through counsel." When Evan received it, his tone changed instantly. Suddenly he was concerned. "Please don't do this. We can talk. My parents didn't mean it." But the next message told me the truth. "My mom says you're making yourself look unstable by running away." There it was again. Unstable. My attorney filed for temporary orders the next day. Not because I wanted war, but because I needed legal clarity. I needed to prevent Evan's parents from doing something behind my back, like filing for guardianship or calling authorities with a narrative already prepared. Evan responded through a lawyer of his own within 48 hours. And guess what they claimed? That I was overwhelmed, emotionally volatile, and withholding the child due to postpartum instability. Linda and Richard weren't on the paperwork officially, but I could see their fingerprints all over the language. My attorney smiled in this tight, professional way and said, "Good. Now we know exactly what game they're playing." Here's where the receipts mattered. We submitted the guardianship documents Linda tried to get me to sign. We submitted screenshots of her text threatening steps for Noah's safety. We submitted Evan's messages accusing me of kidnapping and calling me unstable. And we submitted the audio I recorded at the door when Linda told me, "Easy way or hard way, and you're making yourself look worse." Evan's lawyer tried to spin it as concern. They said the paperwork was a misunderstanding. My attorney asked a simple question. If it was a misunderstanding, why was there a notary? Silence. Then another. If it was about emergencies, why did it include a medical power of attorney over the mother? More silence. Then the judge asked Evan directly whether he knew about the notary visit. Evan hesitated, and that hesitation was loud. He admitted he knew. He admitted he agreed. He admitted his parents suggested it. The judge's expression changed. Not dramatic, but you could tell she didn't like it. Temporary orders were granted. I had primary physical custody temporarily, and Evan got scheduled parenting time, without his parents present, until further review. And then the judge said something that I will never forget. Grandparents do not get to manufacture legal control over an infant by exploiting a postpartum mother. Hearing that out loud felt like my lungs could finally expand again. After court, Evan was furious. Not at his parents. At me. He texted, "You humiliated my mom." That was all I needed to know. Over the next few months, Linda didn't stop. She just got sneakier. She tried to call Noah's pediatrician pretending to be me. She couldn't because I'd added a password. She tried to show up at my sister's house just to see the baby. My sister didn't open the door. She tried to recruit people, mutual friends, church ladies, anyone who would listen to the narrative that I was unstable and keeping a baby from his family. I stopped caring what they said. Because when people are losing control, they get loud. And I was done being quiet. I kept therapy appointments documented, not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted a paper trail showing I was stable, proactive, and supported. I kept Noah's appointments consistent. I kept my life clean. Evan, meanwhile, kept showing up to visits looking like he'd been coached. He'd say things like, "We just want to support you, and Mom's heartbroken, and we can all move forward if you cooperate." Cooperate meant let Linda back in. I didn't. 6 months later, Evan pushed again. He asked the court to allow his parents to be present during visits to help. My attorney nearly laughed. We brought out the guardianship documents again. The notary, the power of attorney, the text threats. The judge denied it hard. And this time, the judge warned Evan that continuing to involve third parties in a way that pressured or harassed me could result in stricter boundaries. Linda's face in court that day was something I'll never forget. She didn't look angry. She looked stunned, like she couldn't understand why her smile wasn't working. That's when I realized Linda believed she was entitled to my baby. She believed she could outmaneuver me because I was postpartum and tired. She believed wrong. Evan and I didn't reconcile. We couldn't. Not after he chose his mother's control over my safety. We finalized divorce terms later with clear boundaries. Evan has parenting time. Linda and Richard have none unless I consent. All communication is written. No surprise visits. No family meetings. No notaries. No more traps. People asked me if I regretted leaving so fast. And here's my honest answer. I didn't leave because of one day. I left because that day showed me the future. A future where every time I set a boundary, they'd call me unstable. A future where my motherhood would always be questioned. A future where my husband would always pick his mother's feelings over my reality. So no, I don't regret it. I regret that I ever thought polite was safer than firm. Because the moment I stopped trying to be liked, I started being protected. So I want to ask you, if your in-laws showed up postpartum with a notary and guardianship papers, would you have stayed calm, or would you have exploded? And if you've made it this far, do me a favor. Hit like, drop your verdict in the comments, and subscribe. We're pushing for our first 1,000 subscribers, and I post full Reddit-style stories like this every day.